Hello, world, and welcome to Gsgedm Drum Machines Behind the Scenes podcast, episode 3. Can you believe it? We are just moving right along. Episode 3. And we just want to show our appreciation and love for you guys being with us from the start. We especially want to give a special shout out to some listeners in Nigeria, Finland, Russia, and Colombia. Let me tell you, this techno thing, this Detroit techno thing is international, baby. I'm here to tell you. And speaking of techno, we have decided to dedicate this entire episode 3 to the great Mike Huckaby. Without a doubt, without question, Mike Huckaby has influenced a lot of people in the dance community across the globe. And I can't wait for you to hear the kind words from others in the house and techno community about the great Mike Huckaby. Before we get into it though, I definitely want you guys to welcome Jennifer Washington and David Grandison, my teammates for today. And they are also producers on the great Gsgedm Drum Machines documentary.
Thanks, Reg, and thank you for all that you do. I'm Jennifer Washington, and I, along with Kristian Hill and Dave Grandison, have been producing this feature-length documentary on Detroit Techno for almost 10 years now. And this project has taken us around the world, and what an amazing journey it's been. It's also been so much fun getting to know my childhood heroes in this way. As everyone may or may not know, I grew up on the northwest side of Detroit in the 1980s, and I had no idea who these guys were at the time or that this awesome music was even from the D. It's crazy because fast forward 20 years, I'm now on this mission to make sure that the whole world knows about this music and that Detroiters are responsible for it. And after having interviewed Juan, Kevin, Derrick, Blake, and Santonio, and everyone else as many times as we had, I mean, each time we connected with them, I definitely was a little starstruck and impressed. But I have to say that after having met Mike Huckaby, I was not only impressed, but I was inspired and humbled. When we first met, he told us about a music program at Detroit's Youthville Community Center, where he had been volunteering and teaching music production. He was so passionate about passing this information on to kids. And he was a little disappointed because he just didn't think that it was going to continue. And when I asked him why, he said because enrollment was low and that it was too expensive for a lot of these kids. And when I asked him how much it cost, he said it was $25 a year. And for once, it got me to be thinking about something other than myself. And it inspired me to figure out how I could help too. And then he started to tell us about this dream, so to speak, that he had about how God and the angels were sitting around discussing what they should do about Detroit one day. And what he said moved Kristian and I so much to the point that we both knew at that moment that we had a new title for our film.
I know how this industry works. I know how it's set up to take complete advantage of a person's soul. And I have this analogy. God was sleeping one day and the angels came in the room. Was like, man, you know, the people in Detroit, man, are like saying they're starving. We gotta do something, man. Like, they're saying they can't take how hard it is out here. God said, give them drum machines. And the angels looked at each other like, drum machines? And then one angel was smart enough to say, you know what? If God said that, then that's what you do.
And the last time that I saw Mike was in 2018 in Detroit. I had heard he had been sick, and so I made a point to connect with him over a smoothie. And I brought him a God Said Give Him Drum Machines hoodie and a t-shirt and a poster, all with his words as the title of our film. It was so important for Kristian and I to show Mike where we were going with all of this. Because what started out as a small documentary project about the music from our hometown had soon become our life's work. And we will always be indebted to Mike and his character and legacy forever.
Guys, so on this episode, we have managed to unearth a mix that our director, Kristian Hill, and Mike Huckaby did back in 1987 at Michigan State. Is that crazy or what? Our director, Kristian Hill, has some DJ skills and has a recorded DJ set to prove it. A DJ set that he did with Mike Huckaby. That's crazy. But, thanks to Lanier in South Africa, a friend of ours, he is the one that was able to dig up this tape, this mixtape from so long ago. So this tape that Kristian Hill and Mike Huckaby did in 1987, the mix will be on air at 8ballradio.nyc. That's 8ballradio.nyc. And we'll also be getting it up on our SoundCloud too. So, keep updated on our socials for more info. Kristian Hill, the director and DJ. Man, that's crazy. As long as I've known Kristian, I never knew that he had touched those turntables at some point. But hey, enough of me talking. Let's get into this DJ set. Kristian Hill and Mike Huckaby.
You know how back in the day, these tapes were like everything just to get a tape of this music and have your own interpretation from it, or have somebody else's interpretation that you could kind of like co-opt as your own, like you knew what D-Train, you knew Sidewalk Talk, you knew Martin Circus, and you had like tapes and somehow mixes that represented like your interpretation of this music, right? So, and just to make one was like something was like, just to have the opportunity to make one was like one thing. It's not like it wasn't like a playlist either. It was just the kind of like, you got whatever you got when you press record on the radio. You never knew what you were going to get. It sometimes took you into other worlds, and this particular tape is something that just like, man, I wasn't even looking for. I didn't even know it existed, and watching kind of people talk about, I think it was Jesse Saunders. He does these like little podcasts where he talks about kind of people's early history in house and techno. And he had one about Detroit. And they were talking about the progressive era almost like it didn't exist. And just what this progressive music was, bro, and the progressive music that we used to play. And man, I got on kind of like a little hunt for progressive tapes. This early music, this early progressive music, is kind of the history of it has been lost. So I was looking for tapes, and my buddy Emmett Nicholas, I know he has a collection. My boy Fred Little has a collection that I'm learning about. And now I was reaching out to my boy Lanier, who lives in South Africa. I knew he had a collection. And bro, because of COVID, you know what I mean? I hadn't talked to, I wanted to reach out to Lanier. I haven't talked to him in years. And just we hooked up, had a good conversation. And then in the conversation, I asked him, did he still have his tape collection? He said, yeah, man. And, you know, he told me, you know, he had some King Collier, he had some Steve Dunbar, you know, he even had some Daryl Shannon. And dude, in those tapes, he had an early tape of me, and he had another tape of me and Mike Huckaby from Michigan State in 1987, bro. And that tape, I didn't even know it existed, man. So he shared it with me, and bro, it brought back a lot of memories. You know what I mean? Just the rush of like going and getting all your equipment together, having your crates, packing the car, renting the speakers, you know, just going to hook up the speakers. I mean, just the whole vibe, bro. And on this tape, man, I introduced Huckaby, dude. I'm like, you know, for the next half an hour, you're going to hear Mr. Mike Huckaby, you know. I even hit him with the cut it up mic, you know, at the end of it. And dude, just the memories that shit brought back, bro. I miss my man. Our friendship is based in music. And this is just an example of it, you know.
Checking 1, 2. I'd like to take time out to welcome each and every one of you to the MSU Union. All right, you have a half an hour left to drill your pants off. I'm your audio tech, and my name is Mr. Kristian Hill, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you again. And now on the tables, Mr. Mike Huckaby. Cut it up, Mike.
Up next, we're going to hear from some of my colleagues in the world of electronic music, and also friends of the God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines team. So, you know, I'm really pleased and honored that these guys took some time out of their busy schedules to, you know, just give us some kind words and memories of the great Mike Huckaby. So we'll hear from Eddie Fowlkes and Robert Hood.
This is Eddie Fowlkes, techno originator, godfather, techno soul. Huck was a cool dude. Respect him a lot. You know, it takes a lot to take time to do something for the kids. You know, not having kids for himself. I'm sure Huck kind of cross-referenced that to helping the kids. You know, and Huck did a remix for me on my first label, City Boy Records, featuring Bill Beaver. Where Would I Be? He called me and asked me, hey man, I need to get my name out there. I was like, bet, no problem. And been on Huck like since 1983. We met each other. We met at the bus stop. He actually knew who I was, you know, at the time, but it was all good. And we've been friends ever since. You know, sad that, you know, Huck has gone. You know, still had a lot of irons in the fires to put out. You know, he had a lot of irons in the fire, you know, to get things going for himself. You know, and you know, his slogan will live on forever. God gave us drum machines. You know? So I always tell my kids, things happen for a reason. You know, can't control what God already have in front of you.
Hey, this is Robert Hood. In the early days of progressive music, Mike Huckaby was at the forefront. He was a selfless ambassador of Detroit dance music and a connoisseur of fine music. He will be greatly missed.
Next up, we're going to have DJ and producer extraordinaire, Mr. Rick Wade, who was really good friends with Mike Huckaby for a long time. And so we're honored that he too took the time out of his schedule to share with us his memories about the great Mike Huckaby.
Hello.
Hello. Hey.
What up?
Hey, what's happening?
What up, bro?
Yo, what's going on?
You know, it's funny. So there are two reasons why I started my own label. Okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Two reasons. One was one day I was sitting in Derrick May's office, and I happened to see a royalty statement from some music he had licensed to a video game. The second was Rick Wade. So this was, oh my God, man, this had to have been like 15, 20 years ago. Rick was like, he was the guest DJ, right? And it was this club, man. It was like way the hell out somewhere, probably like off of Telegraph Road or some shit, right? And Rick was like way up, you know, like the dance floor was, you know, at the bottom, but you had to look up at the DJ. And so Rick, you know, was the DJ for that night. You know, I went out there to, you know, support him. And like for the first 40 minutes of his set, he played nothing but his shit. Right. And that always stuck with me. Like, okay, that's what it's about. You know, that's what makes you different from everyone else, is that you're playing your own production. So, you know, Rick, you don't know this, but you know it now. But, you know, you're the inspiration, one of the key inspirations behind me starting, you know, my own label back in the day. Appreciate you, brother.
Well, I'm humbled by that.
Absolutely.
Well, let's see. I'll start at the beginning of Record Time, or I should say, where my story begins with Record Time. I had got a job working there, and originally, well, let me say, Record Time was split into two parts. You had the normal store where you had the CDs and the cassettes and that sort of thing. But then you also had what was known as the dance room, which was like a completely separate store in there. But inside this store, there was DJ setup. There were turntables, mixer, speakers, everything. So it was like a little mini club in there that you could buy records at, basically. I wasn't in the dance room. I wanted to get in there, but for whatever reason, they wanted to keep me on the cash register and all that stuff. But whenever Huck wasn't there, you know, if he was on break or out somewhere, I would go in there and, like, you know, help the customers out coming in looking for a different vinyl. A spot opened up in there, and I was pressing to get in there. And then finally Huck went to the owner and was like, hey, you need to put Rick in here because he knows all the DJs, he knows all the music, he'd be a really good asset in here. And the owner really listened to what Huck had to say. He held Huck's word in high esteem. So that's how I ended up getting in there, was because Huck vouched for me. And now I had never met Huck before I started working at the record store. I knew who he was, but he didn't know who I was or anything. At that point, I hadn't put any records out or nothing. I was a local DJ playing at different spots around town. And I wasn't actually known for house music yet either. Back in those days, I was Big Daddy Rick, the ghetto tech DJ. That's what my thing was back in the old days. And so that was like the world that I sort of floated in. I had house music mix shows on various radio stations from time to time. But as far as everybody in Detroit, when I was, the ghetto tech guy. As I was working in the dance room, that's when me and Huck we formed our friendship. We saw that we were very similar and like things we liked, especially the type of deep house music. We both liked almost exactly, we had almost the exact same taste when it came to house music. And that's really how our friendship, or the basis for our friendship, that's where the foundation of it. As I was working in there, I kind of looked up to Huck, as if he were a big brother or something to me, because I would see all the respect that Huck commanded from everybody. And I was just some young wilding out young buck back in them days. But I was like, man, I want to get that respect like Huck, Huck has it. And Huck kind of took me under his wing and sort of guided me along and showed me the ins and outs of not just, say, music production or DJing or getting gigs or anything, but life in general. Huck really had it together. He, even back in them old days, he had a wisdom that was far beyond his years. He was a very old soul, and he contained a wealth of knowledge. And the thing that was good about it, Huck, he was more than happy to share his knowledge with everybody. Anybody, if you were willing to listen, he had some knowledge to share with you. And it was usually something that you could take to the bank, and if you followed his advice, your situation would definitely improve. For example, when I started making my first house tracks, we would do this thing where we would make music and then bring it into the dance room and play it on cassette, and it would just be playing out. And me and Huck would do this thing where we would try to trick each other, and we would try to make each other think it was a record that came in, but it was really something that we had worked on. And the way how we could tell if it was good or not, if one of us started like nodding our head or asked, hey man, what's that? What's that track? And then Huck would be like, I got you, didn't I? Yeah, I made that. Yeah, that's hot. You like that, don't you? And I would do the same thing for Huck. But I was, like I said, I was a ghetto tech type of guy, but I started making house tracks. And Huck was over at my spot one night, and we're listening to one of my tracks play, and Huck's like, yeah, man, that's hot, but where's the bass line at? And I'm like, oh man, I don't need to put no bass line in there. What you talking about, dog? That, not even having you would think I should know better, playing music and, making ghetto tech. But I just, at that time, didn't have a concept. I really need to put a bass line inside of a house track. And Huck was like, no, fool, you got to put a bass line in there, fool. You can't put no track out without a house track without a bass line. The bass line is what helps carry the melody. That's what carries your track. And I took his advice, and that was on the very first Harmony Park record, on a HBO 01. And that record, fortunately, it blew up. And I, credit Huck always with, because I was going to put it out without bass lines on the tracks. and like I say, Huck told me put bass line on it. So I did that. And, the rest, as they say, is history when it comes to Harmony Park. So that was just one small example of how Huck guided me when it came to production wise, and get my act together when it came to producing.
So Rick, let's talk about Harmony Park. So Harmony Park was your label situation?
Yeah, Harmony Park was actually started by myself and Dan Bell. Okay. In the beginning, I had, had those tracks that I was playing. Like I said, I was playing in the dance room, and Dan was hanging out at my spot one night, and we were listening to a mix show, radio mix show. And I would put tracks that I made into the mix show all the time. And Dan was like, "Man, what's that track? That is hot." And I was, it's just some old mess I made, man. Not really confident about it or nothing. And Dan was like, "No, I'm serious. That track is hot." He's like, "That's way better than that ghetto tech stuff you're doing." He's like, "You need to focus on making house music. Don't focus on ghetto tech." And so Harmony, and I said, "Well, I don't know nothing about putting out a house record. That world is foreign to me, And Dan said, "Don't worry about it. You just make the music. I'll take care of everything else." So on that first Harmony Park record, that was me and Dan Bell. And Huck gets a lot of credit too, because Dan knew about the business side of things, how to run the label and all of that type of stuff. But Huck knew what DJs hands promos needed to be in. Because myself, like I said, other than say house DJs who came into the dance room, I didn't know who should have a white label and how best to distribute that limited amount of test presses that we would get. Dan didn't know either, because Dan was more on the techno side of things with the +8 crew and that sort of world.
Right.
But Huck,
Richie Houghton and
Richie Houghton and all those cats.
Right.
But Huck knew all the house DJs across the globe, whether it was New York, Chicago, London, Paris. Huckaby was like, "All right, we need to get these test presses." And when Huck would go overseas, one of the times he went, he took a batch of the white labels with him and just handed them out to cats over there. And next thing you know, I'm getting calls from the UK about the record, and it hasn't even officially came out yet. And that was all due to Huck's influence passing those white labels out. As time went on the second record, that was Huckaby's record, Deep Transportation.
Deep Transportation, right. I remember.
Yep. And at that point, Dan had started to blow up with his DBX stuff, because his stuff was like really hitting in Chicago at that time. And then it just kind of spread across the globe. And Dan was like, "Look, man, I got to step back from Harmony Park, so I can focus on my own stuff." And I was like, "Oh man, it's no problem. You got to do what you got to do. Don't think you got to hold yourself up for me or nothing like that at all, man." And then Huck just kind of stepped into the role that Dan was in at that time. And so from that point on, Harmony Park was sort of a joint collaboration between me and Huck. Anytime I would be about to release a record, Huck would handle getting those test presses out to who they needed to get out to. And he would talk to specific record stores too, because he had a good relationship with like the purchasers and buyers from different record stores across the globe. So Huck would be on the phone with them like, hey, got this Harmony Park, guys, I'm sure you can use some, let me know if you want to pick up any. So Harmony Park was my label, so to speak, but I had a lot of help in the beginning with that, between Dan and Mike Huckaby. So that's where Huck came into play with Harmony Park.
Nice. You need to bring those T-shirts back, man.
Well, I have some T-shirts on the rickwadedesigns.com.
On the website? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I have some Harmony Park T-shirts out there.
Nice.
I definitely wanted to ask you about, what your thoughts are on, I think that right now there's a lot of, there's a lot going on right now. One of the things that always impressed me about Huck was that he did work at Youthville, and he was teaching, Reactor, Machine, Ableton to the youngsters there. And, being an educator at heart, that to me was like, that's his legacy right there. What do you think about, his work, and who did he work with? Tell us a little bit about some of the people who came through his tutelage.
Well, the only one notable that I know of is Kyle Hall, because the Youthville stuff, that was more Huck's thing. I wasn't associated with that at all. So I can't really speak on, what it was like when he was down there teaching the kids, or anybody of note aside from Kyle Hall who he was teaching down there. But I can say this, Huck loved teaching the kids. I mean, he was super passionate about that. And he took such pride in that. And I would say pride, and not in a boastful or vain way, but he was proud of everything that was happening with the kids as he was teaching them, because he would always talk about how quick they pick up on things, and how they would approach making a track or approach using a specific sound in a way he had never thought of before. And he was always amazed at the creativity that all of these kids had down there. And so Huck would be like, as much as he's teaching them about how to use the software or the equipment, he's like, they're teaching him about fresh ways to approach using specific sounds, or arranging a track in a specific way, or combining elements that you wouldn't necessarily think would go together. Like he would say the kids are combining like what we would consider like traditional house elements in with techno tracks, or even in with hip hop tracks. And Huck would be like, these kids, man, their minds, they on another level, man. They thinking in ways we never thought of, man. They thinking in ways we never thought of. Sorry, when I talk about Huck, I always try to imitate his voice a lot of the time.
Yeah. That's great. I actually got a little piece of talking about Youthville queued up. Y'all want to hear it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I found a little piece of him talking about it. Jen, I'm going to share my screen briefly so that you can hear my audio. So this is Huck at Beat Drop. And, I got a minute or two of him telling a little bit about what his work there.
I want to talk a little bit about Youthville, the project that you're involved with in Detroit. Can you tell me a little bit about that? You work with youth up to the age of 19, and you teach music production.
Yeah, I teach Reactor and Ableton. Really fundamental to teach both of those classes, especially reactor, to show them what sound is capable from what waveform, or what waveform produces what sound, what you use it for, what is an envelope, what is an oscillator, all, so many of these things and the terminology for it. And then we make beats, and then we put that together in a track enables, and I also teach machine as well. So a little bit of spillover of all three. Can you maybe describe some of your students that you've encountered over the years? Kyle Hall is probably one of the most successful of them all. He was just really had a lot of energy at the age of 14, and he just picked the ball up and ran with it. He had a lot of questions, and I kind of answered from him, and he just took it from there. Haven't seen anybody really like him that has taken the ball and run with it. Really exceptional kid. And then there's a lot of really exceptional kids producing hip hop. They also can produce house. And I'm in the midst of trying to put out an EP from the students. That's already going right now. I have the tracks. I just have to finish them. It's different 10 to 20 years later, because they're influenced by dubstep, and they're making house, and I have to realize that I didn't have that in my path to be influenced by dubstep, so they'll try to make a house track with some of that influence in it, and I tell them, well, that's a separate thing, that doesn't work, and they try to just throw everything in the track. And I have to, you just have to give them their space to feel out everything that they're influenced by. And that's one thing that I have to realize, is that when I was coming up, I wasn't influenced by that genre of music. There's a pretty decent age range in this room right now. I'm wondering if you think that young people have an advantage when learning music production. Not at all. Not at all. Anybody can learn music theory. Anybody can learn the piano. I want to shoot the guy that said the older you are, the less chances you have to learn the piano. I want to shoot that guy, because that is not true. I mean, you can learn the piano at 30, 40, doesn't matter. It just matters to how much you practice. That is such a lie. That's one of the myths about that I like to shed light on. That so many people hear that, and it's a barrier for them to even initiate taking lessons. They say to themselves, "Well, I'm 30, I'm 35." It's always been said that the older you get, the harder it gets. Not true. If you can do anything at any age.
So yeah, just wanted to let you hear a little bit, and he really reinforced what you said.
Yeah.
you literally said, and so I thought that was just really, really ironic, because that was he's like, anybody can do it, and they're putting things together that we didn't think we were gonna do. Mm-hmm. The way we say don't do it, and it works, and that's how Kyle Hall is. Kyle Hall. When you hear his work, you're like, he's doing things you never expected.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. I just think that this video kind of just solidifies in my mind how great Huckaby was. He was more than just a DJ. He was a teacher. He was this intellectual. He was approachable, he was humble. And I think that's why the world loved that brother so much, because not only was he, concerned about himself, but, when you think you sit down with Huckaby, it wasn't about him. He always wanted to know what was going on in your life. What were you doing? I remember I was having some challenges with Ableton, and I hit Huck up, and he was like, "Oh man, that's easy." And I was like, "Bro, easy. I'm over here struggling." And so he gave me his words of wisdom, or his knowledge on it, and set me straight. And the other thing too, as a DJ, I just had, and I'm sure Rick, you may agree with me. There was such a reverence for Huckaby as a DJ. He was one of the first cats, man, that I ever saw that could mix a damn record and had those headphones sitting on top of his head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
have seen, I've been around a lot of DJs, and you have too, Rick, but Huckaby, he knew those records, right? He was a student of the music of those records. Man, he knew where those breaks were. He would barely listen to those headphones, man. And those mixes would be on point. So I remember doing this party with Eddie Fowlkes and Mike Huckaby in New York. And I opened up for Huckaby, and I just remember this was probably like maybe 3-4 years ago, and I remember being nervous, right? And it wasn't a nervousness based in I didn't know what I was doing. It was a nervousness based in respect, and I wanted to come correct. You know what I mean? Like I wanted my shit to be right because I'm opening this up for Huckaby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was just the man like that. I called him that was the Yoda of house music. You know what I mean? Like when he DJ'd, he had this presence. You know what I mean? This command that was imbued with humility, man, and knowledge. And I if anything, if it's up to us, the last thing we should be about, as Detroit artists, is really keeping the spirit of Huckaby and what he created to live on. You know what I mean? And I just think it's wonderful how he started to teach the kids, man, and expose them to what we do for a living. You know what I mean? Because that's how it carries on. Much love to Huckaby.
Yeah, Huck was he felt really strongly about that when it came to teaching the kids, not just for the sake of teaching the younger generation, but Huck felt really strongly about passing our knowledge on to other people. He was Huck would say all the time that we were walking libraries or encyclopedias of knowledge about music, about DJing, about track production, all of that. But that knowledge needs to be shared with the world. Because I remember, because I do sample CDs, sell sample packs and stuff. But I got that idea from Huck, because Huck was, the first one that I actually knew who was in person who was doing that. And I remember Huck came over with his first sample CD and had all these sounds on it. And he was like, "Hey man, check this out. Let me know if you think these sounds are usable." And they were definitely usable, because like from that time I got that CD, probably my next 50 records or 50 tracks were all made using that Huck CD, those sounds on there. So and Huck, I would always laugh because people would talk about the Rick Wade sound, like aside from like the Fender Rhodes, but like that deep, when I do like more deep techie stuff, I use like those that have this specific type of sound that I use for the chords and stuff. That's from Huck's CD. And Huck would be like, "Man, these fools talking about the Rick Wade sound. I made those sounds." He came over with that sample pack and let me hear, and was like, "You think this is usable?" I'm like, "Man, what you doing, fool? You giving away the secret sauce. That's you giving away what we use to make our tracks. That's the magic right there. Why are you trying to give that out to everybody?" And Huck was like, "No, fool, you don't understand that people aren't gonna use this the way that we would use it." He said how people will use it is based on their life experiences and what they were influenced by. He's like, people don't have the same experiences that we had. They don't have the same influences that we had. And he is like, don't even worry about that. I'm like, man, what you talking about? You get the sound, that's it right there. And Huck was like, no, fool, you don't see the big picture, fool. For you, it's like that because of how you came up and how you were influenced. He's like, for everybody else, no, it's not like that. And then sure enough, that CD came out and Huck came over one day and was playing for me because he had that radio show in Canada on that Canadian station.
Right,
and,
CJAM, I think it was.
Yeah, that's it, CJAM. Mm-hmm. And he would play tracks that people had made using their CDs on there a lot. And he would be like, "See, fool, I told you. I'm like, man, you're right. I would have never thought at all ever to make a track like that using your sounds. I'm like, yeah, you were right, Huck. You were right. And so and it was after that, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make me some sample CDs now. Now that I know I won't be giving away the secret formula. And then Huck was like, "Oh, fool, you biting me, fool. You biting me now."
That's great. But yeah, My Life with the Wave was epic. You know, that was epic. And I listened to that show, and what you're saying is just so true. It's your experience that helps you to create your music. And so by the nature of not being from the D, you're gonna create something that's completely different. That's what it's about, is really understanding that, we're telling stories based on our own experience. You can't replicate the D if you're not from the D.
That's right.
Well, see, I'm actually not from Detroit either, though. I moved here to the Detroit area back in like '87, so I've been here most of my whole life. But
come on, you from the D?
Yeah. Right, we claim you as Detroit, brother.
I've been in and out of the D for 30 years, but I'm from the
right.
D.
Well, no, I mean, I claim Detroit too. For me, it was Detroit is where I got my musical chops. It was here that I learned production. It was here that I became a professional DJ. It was like everything that people know about Rick Wade music-wise would not exist without Detroit. So yeah, I'm definitely, when it comes to the music, it's Rick Wade, it's Detroit. You can't separate the two. It's just one and the same.
So, bro, I just got one last question for you. So, we are making this documentary, God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines, telling the story of the origin of techno and how it came from Detroit. How, in your mind, how important is this story, you think, as far as, telling the world, letting them know, exposing them to how techno came from Detroit?
Well, it's important on a whole range of levels. Just for one level, it's just for us as Black people, it's important for us to even know that that's something that we have done. That's an accomplishment. That's something that has influenced the world, not just influenced DJs, but it's influenced culture itself across the globe. As Berlin as we know it wouldn't exist without Detroit techno.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much of a significant impact Juan and Derrick and Kevin and all Detroit itself has had on the world. Also, too, unfortunately, we know how things go within the world. It'll be without active diligence, by yourself and everybody doing the documentaries like this. 5 years from now, they'll be like David Guetta and Tiesto created techno on a beach in Ibiza or something like that, and that'll be the narrative that's told to the world, and we'll be left behind, and then the younger cats will be coming up behind us, dang man, we never did nothing as a people. So it's important, I feel, that this gets out just for that sake alone, that it's important. It needs to be not just this documentary, but this is something that needs to be said continually. It can't be a one and done, just our generation or within this span of a couple of years. We all know it, but once we're gone, we still need people around to be able to tell the story and tell it accurately as well. So I feel it's very important, to do projects like this. Well, I could tell a quick little story about the way that Huck had influenced me when it came to Harmony Park. Remember, I was putting that first record out, I had a few tracks, right? But, more than just that original 4 that came out on that first record. But to me, those first 4 were the hottest ones I had at that time. And then I had a couple other tracks that I felt weren't as strong, but and Huck knew which tracks I liked and all of that. And so he was like, well, why you pick these 4 to put out, and why didn't you pick these? I know you really like that other track, man. Why did? And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to put all my hot tracks out at one time. I want to keep some back, so for like the next release, I can have something I know is hot on there too. And Huck was like, no, fool, that's not how you put out a record. He said, at any moment in time, whatever you feel is your hottest material, that's what you put out. And then I was like, but man, what? And Huck said, you made those tracks, didn't you? So why can't you make more tracks that are even hotter than that? And then that always stuck with me. And I was, I did make those tracks. So why couldn't I make more that's just as hot or hotter than that? So going forward from that moment on, I always kept that philosophy where whatever space and time I'm in and I'm about to release something, whatever I have that I feel to me at that moment in time is the hottest, that's what I put out at that time. And that's all thanks to Huck telling me, don't hold anything back. You got to go 100%. If you're going to do it, you got to go all in on it. You don't go halfway, don't hold nothing back. Just put it all out there. And then the next time you do that exact same thing, you don't hold anything back. You put it all out there every single time. So I thought I'd share that because that's some advice that Huck gave me that I still follow to this day. And, and this was back in 1992, 93 when he told me this, and it still resonates with me to this day.
Up next, guys, if you think those stories were cool about Mike Huckaby with Rick Wade, up next, I managed to catch up with Mr. Derrick May and Carl Craig, both of whom gave some very inspiring and uplifting words about the great Mike Huckaby. Check it out.
I have a great story about Mike Huckaby. It was Huckaby, not Huckaby. Mike used to, back at the very beginning, in the first days of all this, I was trying to do my mixtapes for the radio station. And I didn't have them. So I used to borrow Mike's mixer on occasion. And he would let me, Mike was reluctant to let me do it. It was his only mixer. And everybody knew back in those days that I used to break faders. I was the fader breaker. I was the fast, furious fader breaker guy. So he let me do it. And he was kind enough to me. At that point, he was just a young kid, and I was a young kid, and we were both just still carrying milk crates for our records, and there was no such thing as an international DJ. There was no glamour, no glory. There was nothing in this. It was just local. It was a beautiful thing, and we were trying to achieve excellence by being better than our counterparts, better than our contemporaries, which were our friends, or not necessarily our friends, but people that were doing the same thing in Detroit. Detroit was it's hard to explain for those who don't live in the city, the close-knit community that we have musically here. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily friends, the best of friends, but it was a very competitive environment growing up, similar to New York or Chicago or any other big city where you got all these young kids fighting for that same straw, trying to grab the same straw. So it was this really, it was a beautiful thing for him to let me do that, because we were both striving for the same kind of thing. But he knew I was doing my radio show with it, and he knew that he wasn't doing my radio show with it. But he was very kind and very generous to me. And in return, later on in life, when I was playing at the Music Institute, which is the pinnacle club of Detroit, one of the greatest clubs of all time. The Friday nights was the best night the club ever had, every single Friday. Mm-hmm. When I first started traveling and going out of town, and it was Mike who I called to be my replacement. Kevin Saunderson played at the Music Institute one time, and that was the very first weekend because I had to go out of town. Mm-hmm. After that, it was just myself and D. Wynn. We did every single weekend. Nobody else did it. But when I had to go out of town, when I finally started traveling, when all the records started going crazy and it just started taking off, I thought about Mike Huckaby. And I said, you know what, Mike, you're good people. You're a great DJ. Can you do this for me? And he was like, you want me to play at the Music Institute? you know how he got that one eyebrow went up. Right. He kind of tilted his head to the left a little bit, and his mouth would curl to the right up a little bit. Right. You want me to do that, man? You sure about that, man? I'm like, yeah, man, we'll go in there and tear it up, man. Do your thing. So it was a different thing. But when I came back, I was gone for like 3 weeks. When I came back, nobody had anything to complain. There was no complaint, not one. Because when you're playing every single week at a club, and when you're doing what we were doing, myself and D. Wynn, making history every single Friday night, mm-hmm. It's hard to follow that up. Mm-hmm. It's hard to step into that, and he did it well. And Mike was always a good friend. He was a dear friend. It broke my heart when he died the way he did. Mm-hmm. And I just saw his brother Craig when I was driving the other day, and I didn't stop to speak to him because I don't think there's anything to say, about this. I think it was tough. It was ugly and tough and sad, and it's just hard. Right. We're living in some difficult times. A lot of us are struggling, going through all kinds of things. I'm dealing with some things myself. We're all going through some very interesting times. It's a very trying time, and we are all being tested. Right. And where we go from here and how we survive this will truly tell the story of what we're made of. And I can tell you this, and I know you know for a fact, that Mike was made of salt. He was a good brother. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Good words.
Reggie,
yes.
Thank you. You're a class act, my brother, and I appreciate you calling me about this, especially during these times that I'm dealing with. Thank you for thinking of me. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak about a friend of mine, a genuine, kind, good man that, really just to help anybody.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, brother, for taking the time.
All right.
You said Carl wants to say some words?
Yeah, hold on a second. Hold on.
All right.
Hold on one second.
Thanks.
Hey, Red.
Hey, brother, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, brother. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. Thank you so much for this. We're recording now, so yeah.
Well, Mike was a man that I knew for a long time without really knowing him. He was, his character was quite quiet unless he's around people who we really knew, and then it was still reserved in many cases. He was a guy who, I believe, he thought through his through his comments, thought through what he was going to say before he said it. He wasn't a guy who I expected to, have a fast conversation and it just happens. It's like, he really had to think through what he said, and I think that he was very deliberate in how he said things so that you didn't get him wrong. And that's great. And I think, when at Record Time, when he was there was a lot of, real thought into what he did with the dance room, and there was a lot of thought in what he brought to the table there. And, he might have had the biggest influence on what DJs played in Detroit outside of, not being on the radio. So he had that power to bring in the music that could shape how people in Detroit listen to music, and it was an important position. I think that he took it very seriously.
Nice. Thank you, brother. Appreciate those kind words. I appreciate you taking the time, man. Much love and respect. Thank you.
Yeah, take it easy, Reggie.
All right, brother. You too.
Hi.
All right. Bye.
Okay.
And what they said about what Carl said about Huck influencing the musical taste of Detroit, that was very true, back in those Record Time days. And the reason being, Huck didn't just have excellent taste in music. We all know that, and he was the main buyer for Record Time for the vinyl records that we sold in the dance room. But Huck had this gift for being able to read people. Like, he, just from a small conversation with a person, he would know like their likes, their dislikes, their mannerisms. He was very good at being able to read people, like with minimal effort. It was almost like a psychic or like a government agent who's trained in that type of stuff, just by how somebody would walk or their choice of words. He would know things about them. And as a result, he knew what type of music they probably would gravitate towards and what they would want to purchase. And so Huck had ended up getting his gift for selecting music people was so good. Before DJs would come, we would get our new shipments in on Thursdays, sometimes spill over into Fridays, and Huck would put together bags for people of records before they even came up to the store. So they've never heard the records before. Huck just pulled them based off of knowing the person. He knew what they would like. He put the records in a bag. The people would come up to the store, wouldn't even need to listen to it. There would be like Huck, they would come up to the store and be like, Huck has a bag put aside for me. My name is DJ such and such. We look through the bags. Yep, here you go. They go straight to the counter and buy it, in and out. And they would listen to it once they got home. That was Huck's gift for knowing what music people liked. And within that spectrum of what the people liked, Huck had his own taste for what he liked. And it was as if Huck knew better than the person themselves what they wanted. Somebody might come up to the record store looking for something. They might have in mind that they're looking for some specific thing, and Huck would just be like, "Oh, yeah, we got that. Have you heard this?" And then they would be like, "Man, whatever I was looking for later for that. I want what you pulling out for me. You know, you just pull some stuff out for me." And then Huck would just be like, "Yep. And basically that's how Kerry Chandler ended up being so huge in the Detroit area. You know, all his tracks was because Huck knew that certain DJs liked a certain drum sound, you know, like specific drum, certain kick drum in particular. And if a track had this specific style of kick drum on it, which Kerry Chandler had in most of his tracks, then the DJ would want to buy that record. And so Huck would always get these Kerry Chandler records in because it had this certain sound, certain style of kick drum on there. Now the tracks were hot too, of course, but back in those days, there was plenty of hot stuff around, but Kerry Chandler, his kicks resonated with so many Detroit DJs, and to where now, you know, that's you drop a Kerry Chandler track at a Detroit party, and you know, you tore the roof off the spot with that. But I said all that stuff just to say that Huck truly had a gift for knowing people and the ability to not force anything on somebody, but just to lead them to it, and they would come to their own conclusion about it. It was kind of like the movie Inception. He would put the idea in their head, and then in the end, they would think they came to that conclusion on their own, but it was really Huck guiding them along the whole time.
Oh, wow. Yes, Huck was the invisible hand behind the machine. Man, I remember those Fridays at record time at the original location, man. That shit was like being in a club. You go to that dance room, man, that little room would be packed. Full of DJs. And if Huck put on a record that you thought was hot, you better get Huck's attention. I would get Huck's attention way in the corner somewhere. "Hey, Huck." Yeah. I was like, "Okay, I got you, man. I got you." And like you said, he would put those bags together, because you know most of those bags were damn near imports or maybe records from New York. Man, you look up, you spend an easy $100. You spend half your check in record time dance room, thanks to Huckaby.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Thanks, Rick, man. That was great, bro.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Those were great stories.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, was that great or what? All those great stories and words of inspiring respect for the great Mike Huckaby. Hey, listen, please remember, you can follow us, this great podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are listening from. Okay. And, you know, I want to also give a special shout out to Michael in North Vancouver and Gary in the United Kingdom for purchasing merch. Yes, you can purchase merch from us, guys. We have a website, Gsgedm.com. We have posters. We have nice hoodies. And we are giving 20% off on everything this holiday season. So please go and check it out, okay? Also, our documentary is due out in summer 2021, and we can't wait for you to see it. So stay updated with us on Facebook and Instagram at God Said Give 'Em drum machines. Also, I wanted to give a special shout out to Output, the sound design company in Los Angeles, for providing me, the composer for this documentary, with such great sonics for the film. Guys, thank you for your support. We appreciate you. And as always, Detroit is techno. And we can't forget, Huckaby, we miss you, brother. We love you, and we will always keep your spirit alive. See you next month, guys. Thank you for your support. Peace.